You're fired.
She poured wine on me in front of 200 guests, laughed as she fired me like I was trash. But 6 months later, she walked into my wedding venue, begging for a booking. She didn't know I now own the place, and I let her fall without saying a word. My name is Tessa, I'm 24 years old, and I used to believe in silent endurance. I grew up poor, the kind of poor where dinner was sometimes just toast and tap water. So, when I landed a job at La Rose Events, the most elite wedding venue in the city, I thought things were finally turning around. I was the lowest-ranked staff member, a server. But I didn't mind. I wore my black apron proudly, tucked my curly brown hair into a neat bun, and learned everything about how that place worked, how flowers were sourced, how champagne was chilled, how the wealthy wanted everything just so. The owner, Madison Quinn, was everything I wasn't: tall, polished, dripping with old money and designer perfume. She didn't speak to me unless I made a mistake, which wasn't often. Until that night. It was the biggest wedding of the season, a celebrity chef marrying a tech millionaire. Cameras, influencers, reporters, all watching. I was tasked with tray service. Simple. Except I bumped into one of the drunk groomsmen. He staggered, collided with me, and a glass of red wine tipped. It spilled right onto Madison's pale gold gown. The entire hall went silent. Time slowed. My breath caught. I'm so sorry. But she didn't let me speak. Her blue eyes glared with ice. Then she grabbed the wine bottle from the bar and poured it down the front of my uniform. I should fire you for breathing, she hissed, loud enough for guests to hear. But instead, you're fired for ruining my event. Gasps. Laughter. Whispers. Dozens of phones are pointing at me. I stood drenched, humiliated, my shoes squishing as I backed away. No one helped. Not even the head chef who once called me the most reliable server he'd ever seen. I walked out through the back alley, red-faced and shaking. That night, I sat on my mattress in my one-room apartment, replaying the humiliation over and over. I thought about quitting hospitality forever. But then I remembered something. Madison didn't own the land the venue sat on. I knew this because I handled delivery slips. And one name kept showing up on the contracts for utility payments and property correspondence. My father's. The man who abandoned me had built something, and I had a legal claim to it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Madison's sneering face and felt the cold splash of wine soaking into my skin. But by morning, I wasn't crying. I was researching. See, my father, Daniel Cortez, walked out on me and my mom when I was 6. We'd lived in a crumbling apartment above a deli. Mom told me he was a builder, someone who used his hands more than his heart. I never knew more than that. No photos. No letters. Nothing. Until now. Because after years of nothing, I'd just seen his name on multiple documents during my shifts at La Rose Events. On gas bills. On tax invoices. Even on the building permit in the office hallway, the one I walked by every single day but never stopped to read. So I started digging. And what do I find? My father built the venue. Every brick. Every archway. He'd sold it 15 years ago, but kept a silent stake in the land lease, a lease Madison never legally secured full control of. Meaning? She didn't own La Rose Events. She just ran it. I could have gone to her. She threw the paperwork in her face. But I didn't want an apology. I wanted a reminder. So I called the lawyer listed on the lease. The name matched a faded envelope I found in one of Mom's old boxes, a name I now recognized as someone who had once represented my father's estate. I asked for a meeting. He agreed, and when I walked into his office, he looked up from his desk with wide eyes. You look just like your father. I smiled, tight-lipped. Then I'm in the right place. We spent the next hour reviewing contracts, transfer clauses, and silence provisions. Turns out, Madison was never supposed to operate under her name past year 10. She was leasing, not owning. But no one had ever challenged it. Until now. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. You understand what this means, right? I nodded. I don't want revenge, I said. I want control. He raised an eyebrow. Same thing, depending on how you play it. I didn't show up at La Rose for a week. No texts. No calls. Nothing. Madison probably thought I'd crawled away in shame, that she'd publicly humiliated the clumsy little server into disappearing. But behind the scenes, I was signing paperwork. Because, thanks to a clause my father had built into the original land agreement, and the fact that Madison had defaulted on 2 silent clauses in the lease, her entire right to operate La Rose was revocable. And I, as Daniel Cortez's sole surviving heir, I had the right to reclaim it. But I didn't just want to take the venue. That would be too quick. Too loud. I wanted to own it quietly, then let the fall happen, in front of everyone. So I made my move. I had the lawyer file an ownership transfer request under Cortez Holdings, the name my father used to register the land years ago. The moment it was approved, I became the legal landlord of La Rose Events. Madison's lease? Terminated with 30 days notice, no appeal, no negotiation. But I didn't stop there. I scheduled a venue showcase to announce the relaunch of La Rose under new management. Sent out invites to local event planners, caterers, florists, even the vendors Madison had treated like trash over the years. And I made sure it was scheduled the same day as Madison's biggest booked wedding, the one she bragged about for weeks. I knew she'd show up early to decorate. And I'd be waiting. That morning, I arrived at the venue in a tailored black dress, holding a clipboard the same way she used to. Vendors were already arriving. Curious glances flicked my way. And then, Madison walked in, dressed in her usual ivory pantsuit, holding her coffee and barking into her phone. She didn't notice me at first, until she saw her name removed from the signage. Until she saw the new ownership under Cortez Holdings banner across the front gate. Until she saw me, standing in her spot, greeting guests like they were mine. She froze. What the hell is going on? I smiled. Welcome to the new La Rose. You don't work here, she snapped. You were fired. You're just Daniel Cortez's daughter, I interrupted. She paled. You poured wine on me in front of everyone, I whispered, stepping closer, and called me worthless. But I've owned this place for a week. Her mouth opened. Closed. The color drained from her face. And then I added, just loud enough for the vendors nearby to hear. You're trespassing, Madison. You have 10 minutes to leave the premises. She didn't move. So I turned to security. Escort her out. Kindly. And just like that, Madison, queen of weddings, tyrant of vendors, slayer of servers, was walked off the property by her former staff. Her crown? Shattered. Her stage? Gone. The moment Madison stepped out of the gates, red-faced, stunned, and humiliated, something shifted in the air. I wasn't invisible anymore. Vendors who used to ignore me now lined up to shake my hand. Former staff came over with cautious smiles. One whispered, "We've been waiting for someone to take her down for years." But I didn't do it for applause. I did it for the girl who was drenched in wine and shame just weeks ago. And I wasn't done yet. In the days that followed, word spread like wildfire. Local blogs picked it up first. Wedding venue tycoon fired her staff publicly, turns out. One of them owned the building. Then came TikTok. Instagram Reels. The audio of Madison screaming, "You don't belong here," played over slow-mo clips of me calmly sipping champagne under the new ownership banner. The story went viral. But I kept my head down, focusing on the real work. I revamped La Rose. Not just the walls and chandeliers, but the culture. No more yelling at servers. No more hierarchy of worth. No more wine-pouring tantrums. I hired back everyone she'd fired unfairly and gave raises to those who stayed loyal through her reign. I let a few trusted planners take lead roles. I even started an internship program for underprivileged women who dreamed of running events, but couldn't afford the education. La Rose wasn't just mine now. It was what it should have always been, a place of joy, elegance, and respect. And Madison? Well, she tried to sue. Claimed I'd stolen her life's work. But the paperwork didn't lie. Her lease was broken. Her contracts expired. Her business? Just a name, and that name had no claim to the land it stood on. When she realized she couldn't win, she spiraled, posting long rants online, blaming everyone but herself. It didn't work. Clients canceled bookings under her name. Vendors cut ties. Her event planning empire collapsed like a wedding cake in the rain. And me? I never said a single bad word about her in public. No interviews. No drama. Just a new sign in front of the venue that read, La Rose, founded in grace, reclaimed with power. 6 months later, the venue was thriving. Every weekend, laughter echoed through the halls. Brides smiled. Guests danced. Staff moved with pride, no longer walking on eggshells. And me? I watched it all from the same corner where I once stood, soaked in red wine and humiliation, now dressed in white linen, clipboard in hand, and full control. But the real full-circle moment came on a Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing vendor schedules when a new client walked in for a tour. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and walked with a nervous twitch. It was Madison. She didn't recognize me at first. She looked around, confused. Wait, this isn't La Rose. What is this place? I walked over, calm as ever. It is La Rose. I just gave it a new heart. Her eyes narrowed, then widened. You? You're... I nodded. The woman you poured wine on. She froze. Flushed. Look, I didn't know, that night. I cut her off with a smile. Relax. I'm not here for revenge. She blinked. Then, why? I leaned in, my voice quiet but clear. Because you already lost everything you thought made you powerful. And I gained everything you tried to destroy. She looked like she wanted to scream. But this time, she didn't. She turned around and walked out, not a word, not a fight. And I turned back to my staff and continued the tour as if nothing had happened. Because I wasn't just the assistant anymore. I was the owner. The story. The quiet storm they never saw coming. And the best part? I never had to raise my voice. I just stood back and let them fall.